All right, let's get right into it. We're going to break down two of the wildest market events of the last decade, the AMC meme craze back in 2021 and the massive silver squeeze of 2026. Now, on the surface, they kind of look the same, right? A bunch of regular people trying to take on the Wall Street giants. But how they ended up? Well, they couldn't be more different.
And that really gets us to the big question we're tackling today. How in the world did one of these squeezes just sort of burn out and become a cautionary tale, while the other one literally triggered a structural crisis in a commodity the entire world depends on? The answer is pretty incredible.
You know, to really understand why the silver squeeze worked so spectacularly, we have to go back and figure out why the AMC squeeze was, well, basically doomed from the start. And it all boils down to what was actually being bought and sold.
The Achilles heel, the absolute kill switch for the whole AMC movement, was one simple word: dilution. See, the company itself had the power to just create more of the very thing everyone was trying to make scarce.
And this analogy just hits the nail on the head. Imagine this. Every single time retail traders banded together and pushed that stock price up, AMC's own management could just press a button and flood the market with millions of new shares. They were fighting an enemy that had a literal infinite supply of ammunition.
This chart right here lays it out perfectly. It's so clear. With AMC, you had everyday speculators trading a digital asset that could be created out of thin air. With silver, you had massive industrial corporations demanding a physical thing you can hold in your hand, something you can't just print. That one difference, it changes the entire game.
So let's flip over to the other side of the story. While AMC could just hit print on new shares, you can't just print more silver. And that simple fact exposed a massive vulnerability that was hiding in plain sight for years.
This number, this is what broke the entire system. For decades, the paper silver market worked because everyone just assumed nobody would ever actually ask for the real metal. There were up to 300 digital IOUs, 300 promises trading for every single physical ounce of silver that was actually sitting in the vaults of the big exchanges like COMEX and the LBMA.
And here's the crucial part. Unlike a stock in a movie theater chain, the modern world literally stops functioning without silver. I mean, the AI revolution, the green energy transition, electric vehicles, they are all physically built with this stuff. For these huge companies, this wasn't some speculative bet on a stock price. This was about survival. They needed the actual metal to keep their factories from shutting down.
So you have this relentless, non-negotiable industrial demand crashing into a system that was already stretched to its breaking point. And when it finally snapped, it triggered something violent, a mechanical feedback loop called a gamma squeeze.
Let's walk through how this thing spiraled out of control step by step. First, as you see, the silver price smashes through a key technical level at $80. That immediately triggers step 2. Thousands of call options, basically bets on a higher price, suddenly become super risky for the banks that sold them. So what do they have to do? To protect themselves, step 3, they are mathematically forced to go out and buy actual physical silver. But look what happens in step 4. Their own buying just pushes the price higher, which in turn makes the next batch of options even riskier, forcing them to buy even more. It becomes this insane accelerating feedback loop, as step 5 shows, that just spirals completely out of their control.
And that is the fundamental difference. The AMC squeeze was all about hype. It was temporary. As soon as people got bored and moved on, the pressure was off. The silver squeeze was structural. When a tech giant took 1,000 bars of silver out of a vault to build a data center, that silver was gone from the market forever.
This brings us to the moment of truth. This is the point where that whole 300-to-1 leverage game just completely fell apart, and all those paper promises were finally called in. Just let that sink in for a second. In 1 week, 7 days, more than a quarter of the entire stockpile of physical silver that was available for delivery on the world's most important exchange just disappeared. The sheer speed of it caused absolute panic.
And make no mistake, this wasn't being driven by a bunch of small-time traders. This was the big money, the institutional players who looked at the situation and suddenly realized their paper contracts might not be worth the, well, paper they were printed on. They lost faith, and they told the exchanges, forget the cash, give us the metal.
And the direct result of that physical panic is what you're looking at right now. The price was forced to just rocket upwards, hitting a new all-time high of over $120 an ounce. Why? Because the market makers who had sold promises for silver they didn't have were forced to buy it back at any price just to make good on their deliveries.
So, now that the dust is finally starting to settle, what's the new reality? What does it all mean?
The world has completely changed how it views silver. It's moved from one asset class to another entirely.
This quote just says it all, doesn't it? The AMC squeeze was a psychological game, a staring contest of who would blink first. The silver squeeze was a direct confrontation with physical scarcity, and you can't really argue with an empty vault. Physics always wins.
So the fallout is this new normal. We're now seeing a permanent two-tier market, where getting your hands on physical silver costs way more than the paper price. Major tech companies aren't running on just-in-time inventories anymore. They're building huge, just-in-case strategic stockpiles. Silver is now treated like a strategic resource, like oil or uranium, something that's vital to a country's economic security. And that really leaves us with a much bigger and honestly, a much more unsettling question. We just watched the global financial system get turned on its head by a run on a relatively small physical market. It really makes you wonder, what happens when this same battle between paper promises and physical reality comes for other even more critical resources that we all just take for granted?